Ladies and gentlemen, on your behalf, I am pleased to introduce our third annual Order of Canada Stories Behind the People luncheon. We are proud to host the celebration of outstanding Canadian contribution and achievement. Today, we honor a few of the deserving Canadians whose life work has made our great nation even better. The Order of Canada was established in 1967 by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. It is the centerpiece of Canada's honour system. Recipients are recognized for a lifetime of outstanding achievement, community involvement, leadership, and service. Canadians from all walks of life are lauded for the positive contributions they have made to our society. Before I introduce three of these wonderful citizens, I want to take a moment to introduce to you another extraordinary Canadian. To anyone who knows and loves Canadian arts and culture, Jian Ghomeshi is one name that likely needs no introduction. Jian is an award-winning broadcaster, writer, musician, and producer, as well as the host and co-creator of the national daily talk program, Q, on CBC Radio and CBC TV. Since its inception in 2007, Q has garnered the largest audience of any cultural affairs program in Canada and has become the highest-rated show in its morning time slot in CBC history. Q is also now broadcast across the United States on PRI. The Washington Post recently named Q as the most popular new arts and culture radio show in America. Last fall, Maclean's magazine named Jian one of the 50 most important people in Canada, and Toronto Life listed Jian as one of the 50 most influential Torontonians, and we are thrilled he could be with us today to moderate the conversation. Joining Jian today are three special guests. Jeannie Becker, television personality and fashion icon, who has been recognized for her contributions to the fashion industry and her promotion of Canadian designers. Marnie McBean, Olympic rowing champion and author, she is only one of two Canadians to win 3 Summer Olympic gold medals. And Margaret McCain, the former Lieutenant Governor of New Brunswick, who has been celebrated for her transformational philanthropic work with Canadian organizations and for her commitment to early childhood development. Before I relinquish the podium, I would like to encourage our live audience to take this opportunity to join the conversation by filling in the Q&A cards at each of your tables. One of our volunteers will be by to collect them. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jian Ghomeshi and our Order of Canada recipients to the Canadian Club of Toronto's podium, Canada's podium of record.
Thank you very much. Is this working? Can you hear me? Yes. Well, you can hear me because you're right there. Everybody else hear me? Thank you. I am not all four of us. I'm just me. I'm going to introduce the three distinguished guests that we have here today. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. I didn't actually wear my Order of Canada pin today because I don't have one. But it is a great exercise in humility to get to sit with people who do have this kind of recognition that they so richly deserve. I'm honored to be here as part of I sit on the board with the Canadian Club. I don't, because of my crazy schedule with the show and everything, often get to come to the events, and I'm honored to be able to attend one and also try and do some moderation at it and ask some questions as well. I am nervous about, I know that there's an event tomorrow. In case anybody thought this was the Tim Hudak event, I'm not him. I know we look very similar. Actually, I did my best to clean up today. I'm Iranian, so I shaved 2 hours ago, and this is what happens. Good, the racial humor, you like that. Still like that, excellent. It's also not, if you're down the hall, there's another thing happening over there. That's the Ontario Brain Institute. And I wanted to make sure nobody had wandered into the wrong room as well, because I'm not sure I would qualify to be leading a discussion around the intricacies of the brain. Well, I was thinking of ways to, one of the things that the Canadian Club wanted to do with this forum today is bring together 3 people who have some commonality, I mean, recognition with the Order of Canada, et cetera, but who really aren't identical humans. I mean, they come from vastly different experiences, and their success comes in very different ways. So one of the things that they are, however, and I was thinking about how we're going to tie this together and what kind of questions I want to ask. One of the things they are really powerful, independent, strong women. And one of the great, powerful, strong, independent women of the world died a couple of days ago, Maya Angelou. And she really, I mean, for most of the people in this room, at least at this point, have now discovered her or heard great quotes over the last 24 hours on Twitter or whatever. But if you haven't had the chance to actually delve into who she was and her life and her story, it is so remarkable. It is such an inspiration, given where she came from and the adversity that she faced, what she became. And her words are an inspiration and an education. She's one of those people that, having had the chance to talk to her, everything that came out of her mouth, you know, it was like a sage, like Yoda. You know, you just want to sit there. And Leonard Cohen's like this. You just want to ask about anything because they're going to tell you that there's such wisdom spun into those words. And so I had the chance to interview her in 2011 about her career as a broad interview. We played a bunch of that today on the show. And I was reminded of her wisdom in terms of both all that she had accomplished, but also what the definition of success was to her. And it's not necessarily what you would expect. Success isn't always defined by awards and money. And the other thing I thought going into today's conversation was that we don't have to be overly earnest either. We can discuss serious subjects, but have a sense of humor about ourselves. And one of the things she said, Maya Angelou said in this interview that played today, I guess at some point I asked her, you know, how intense or serious a person she was. And she said, I'm a very, very serious person. I'm a very serious person. I'm serious enough to know not to take myself seriously, which I thought was another pearl of wisdom from someone who's kind of, and in other parts of the interview, she talks about laughing at yourself and being able to never take yourself too seriously. So in the spirit of Maya Angelou, I thought we could have a conversation about inspiration and education today, and it is such an honor to do so with, as I say, three powerful women who I so look up to, and a couple of whom I've known over the years and who are dear friends. So let me introduce them and bring them up here, and then we can ask some questions. And I've got some broad sort of questions that I thought I'd ask, but I have your cards, and you can keep feeding them to me if you have any particular question you want asked or answered. She is one of the most recognizable, influential, and fabulous women in the fashion industry. Marnie McBean. No. In Canada and around the world, her career in television began as the co-host of the groundbreaking program, The New Music. Some of us would never miss this show when we were kids. Prior to hosting the iconic Fashion Television, of course, aired for 27 years in 140 countries around the world. She is the recipient of countless arts, culture, fashion awards, and is a member of the Order of Canada. Please welcome Jeannie Becker.
Thank you.
We'll make sure to hit the microphone because he's. Throughout her career, she has been active in organizations that promote education, music, and the arts at the provincial and national levels. She served as the Chancellor of the University of Mount Allison for 8 years prior to being appointed as Lieutenant Governor of the province of New Brunswick, the first female to hold this position. She served as a board member of the National Ballet School, currently serves on the board of the Canadian Women's Foundation. She's currently chair of the Margaret and Wallace McCain Family Foundation and champions effective early childhood programs across Canada. What an incredible trajectory she has. Please welcome the Honourable Margaret McCain. please. And she is one of Canada's most decorated Olympians and one of only 2 Canadians, as you heard, ever to win 3 gold medals in the Summer Olympics. We don't have to repeat that. It's not that big a deal. I mean, you know, not bad. It's all right. Her record-breaking rowing career evolved into roles as a specialist in Olympic athlete preparation and mentoring. She is a member and had been a governor of the Canadian Sports Hall of Fame, a recipient of the Governor-General's Meritorious Service Medal, and has been given the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal. She's also been appointed as an officer to the Order of Canada. Please welcome Marnie McBean. Yay.
No one ever mentions their bronze.
That's right. The bronze. How could you have dared get a bronze medal? Settle for that. Own the podium, McBean. All right. Well, where to start with you three? And I thought one of the places that we could start is one unifying factor is you all have been recognized as successful, great, inspirational Canadians. Order of Canada.
Feel good?
Well, it's true. And this is the Canadian Club. So I thought we would start by a simple but maybe not so simple question, which is, what does being Canadian, what does Canada and this kind of recognition mean to you? I'm going to start with Jeannie.
And I know we have to keep it short, which I'm not often
That's your time there.
great at doing. Boy, well, I'm a child of immigrants. My parents are Holocaust survivors. I was born just 4 years after they immigrated here, and grew up with stories of horrendous events in their lives that I think really obviously ended up shaping me, but more than anything, they always brought me up with such an appreciation for this incredible country that we've come to live in and come to really love. And I think it's that knowledge that we are in a place where if we dream hard enough, if we believe firmly enough, if we fight hard enough and are tenacious enough, and we never really give up, and we're fearless about it. We can have anything that we want. We can realize our greatest dreams, and I think that's just about happened with me. I mean, I don't know if I've realized all my dreams yet, but a great many of them. My life has been quite a fantasy, and I really do feel like I owe it all to this amazing country.
So much of what you've done is so much.
It's probably my phone.
It's fine. It's great. It adds color to the conversation. So much of your job, especially in the last 2 or 3 decades, has been traveling around the world. I know you self-identify as Canadian when you're traveling, but what is it, to what you just spoke to, what is it that you think of when you're somewhere else and you think about why Canada is so important to you?
I don't know. I think, as a Canadian, I think Canadians by nature have this inherent air of humility. I mean, some people maybe have it more than others, but it's this complex, I guess, that maybe we developed back growing up in the 60s when, it seemed that the States was the big hip, happening place to be, and, feeling kind of like a poor relation sometimes. But then realizing, the older I got and the more I realized that, it doesn't matter, really where on the planet you live. If you have a voice and a point of view and something to say, you can say it from just anywhere. Realizing that you can really have a message that resonates. I don't know, I just found that that has given me an incredible kind of confidence about being a Canadian. And I feel that we're a kinder, gentler society. And we're a lot more respectful. I mean, I was lucky enough to be in Sochi this past go-round, and I just felt like royalty just because I was Canadian. I felt there was such an incredible reverence for Canada, and I think we're at such an amazing time in the life of this country in terms of the messaging that we are putting out there and the way that we are being perceived by the rest of the world and the power of the talent that we have that has found a
Okay,
platform.
maybe we'll come back to that point, because some would say that Canada's international reputation is changing. Margaret, tell us what Canada means to you.
Well, my roots in Canada go pretty deep. My mother's family came here in 1772 to Eastern Canada. So my roots are deep. Why am I proud to be a Canadian? You know, any of you who have experienced receiving the Order of Canada, so you see the cross-section of people who have contributed to our country from all sectors, all walks of life. We see the diversity, and you get a sense of the value system and the respect that we have for each other. It makes you, it's humbling. You feel honored, but most of all, it infuses you with a great sense of pride in being Canadian. But I think Canada, to me, it means so much to me because of our value system. And you spoke to that, Jeannie. We're a gentler, kinder people. Particularly today, when we look next door, Canadians care for all Canadians. We believe in health care for all Canadians. We believe in equal education for all Canadians, for all people, really. We have a tolerance for people of other nations. We welcome them. Hopefully we welcome them. Maybe we haven't been as kind as we could have been, Jean, in the past. But I think that overall, Canada is respected in the world because of the way we tolerate, accept, and love people, and care for those who are marginalized and disadvantaged. That's why I love Canada.
I love it when you say, all of you out there who have the Order of Canada, you know.
Well, I know there are quite a few out there. I can see two faces
Maybe a
looking
couple,
at me.
yeah. Marnie, you know, as an Olympic athlete, this is a question. This is not a new question to you. Olympic athletes, in a way, are required to give an answer about why Canada is important to them. But what have you learned over the years about why the recognition that you get as a Canadian is so important to you?
Oh, nice twist. No, I do. You're right. I think Olympic athletes have a unique relationship with the flag because we go around branded with it. I would dream. I remember when I was a university student at Western training for the Olympics, and I'd walk past the buildings, and the maple leaf would be on the top of them. I would be talking to the flag. Like, that's connected to all my dreams and my aspirations. And now, sort of 20 years later, I look back and I realize that it was more than just my dream, and what we did and what we do as athletes really is we build a nation. I've had people come up to me and they're like, you know, it's not just about sport. It's like, my kids stayed in school because of watching you do this, the Olympics. I've had people come up to me who don't particularly look like the stereotypical rowing fan, but they're like, "You're Marnie McBean." And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Well, we became Canadian citizens in 1992, and you were the first people we cheered for as new Canadians." And that's pretty powerful stuff. That's still, you know, kind of like just thinking about the flag and what Canada means and the unique relationship that I have with the country always does make me emotional, because I look at it and I love this. I think she's strong enough to take it, but I've never like worn a maple leaf and jumped down on my sofa and screamed and yelled, you know, "Oh Canada," when Margaret Atwood wrote another book. But when athletes go and we perform, you know, Canadians go to the streets and we all go out and we like make sure we're wearing something red and white. And then in that process, we come home and we go across the country. And I have been coast to coast and up to the northern coast, the Atlantic, the Arctic. And you overwhelmingly, you kind of expect people to say, congratulations, you won, 3 gold medals, even though you think it's nothing, but I'll take it. But, they don't just say congratulations, they say thank you. And they say thank you for making me feel proud to be a Canadian on that day. And then having been coast to coast, and I've driven across the country a few times because rowing boats are at least 26 feet long and don't fit in an overhead bin. Right. But I've driven across the country a few times, and our country is gorgeous. Yeah. Like, and all the different things we have to offer, and all the different people and communities. I really do think that sport and Olympic sport binds the nation. Let
me ask you, all three of you, to suspend your modesty for this question, and really, because I'm sure you've all done some self-examination in terms of what was it in you that has led you to the point where the success that you've had and the recognition that you so deserve. So I'll start with you, Marnie. This kid from Etobicoke, and this was I got these little cards that people have, on a couple of the cards they asked this question. Can you name an element that you've discovered that in you that led you to be able to ascend the way you have to the success that you've had? What was it what's one thing that you could identify in yourself that really helped?
I think curiosity, and a combination of curiosity and I had this ability to look forward, but at the same time to be really dumb about it, right? So there's nothing better than being naive for wanting to go forward, because you don't really understand that it's supposed to be hard or difficult or not available to you. I remember being curious about rowing, and then too dumb to know or naive to know that it was supposed to be hard. And then I went to a competition and I beat the Romanians, and I was too naive to know that Canadians aren't supposed to beat the Romanians. So I was always curious about what's next, what's around the corner, how do you learn, how do I get better, how do I improve? And then I think it's a state of bliss when you're too naive to know that you're not supposed to, or no one has, or people like you don't, because then you just go and you do it anyways.
But, that's an amazing story. But at the same time, you wouldn't say, if somebody said, how do I become an Olympic athlete? You wouldn't say, be naive, would you?
Think, don't think, for sure.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, I think it's certainly in the curiosity part makes you look, right? And the naive part tells you don't worry about anything else.
What about the driven part?
Oh yeah, super stubborn.
Where did that come? I mean, just any Olympic athlete has to have incredible drive and dedication to get, let alone to the all the medals and all that you've done. I mean, where did that come from, or when did you first identify that in yourself?
Oh, well, I think that's always been there in a sense that I just took it for granted. I remember when I was 8 years old, I had a paper route. I used to deliver the Star, I think it was in the afternoon, whatever. But I used to deliver the paper route, and there'd be, people, usually it'd be a businessman walking home from work, and I would want to walk faster than him down the street, right? So it was always just these little things that I'm going to beat that guy down there, and I've got 40 pounds of papers, and I'm walking down the street, or I've got them all on my skateboard and I'm pushing them down the street trying to catch up to this dude who's walking really quickly with his briefcase. And I think that type of drive, I just always took as
Do you think that's something that can be taught?
No, I think for what I look for when we're going to bring someone into rowing or to sport, I don't think you can teach toughness. I think you find me someone who's smart and wants to learn and who's tough, we can teach them to do almost anything. But for drive, I think there's lots of people out there who are training around me who I think were more driven than I was. But there's, part of it is that whatever it is, if it's my DNA or whatever, I had water feel. I had a feel for water the way, Jeannie had an eye for fashion, or for Margaret's got a sense for talking to people and building consensus. I have water feel. And so I think everyone's excellent at something. I just found the right thing to be stubborn and driven at.
Margaret, your Order of Canada citation is for your transformational philanthropic contributions to organizations across Canada. Same question to you. What is it in yourself that has led you to succeed so in that field, and also where did that drive come from?
It's a very hard question to answer, actually, 'cause I really don't know. But
I was allowed to give that answer?
okay, next question. Next question.
The naive, dumb one.
I think what that probably drives me is I have a basic innate love for people. I think that drew me into social work. So caring about people. I really care about society. I care about people who are marginalized. I care about making things better for every kid in this country. And that I guess that's what keeps me going, because here I am going to be 80 this year, and I should be home in a rocking chair, but I don't think I will be. There is too much to do, and I want to do it. So where does the drive come from? Thank you.
Jeannie, you've written a book about your life. You have a sense of, you've thought about yourself enough to well, you've
we
done
all
enough,
do in fashion.
You've done enough
That's what it's all
self-examination.
about.
You've done that amazing self-examination to have a sense of what it is in you that brought you to the heights that in journalism and then in fashion that you've achieved. What do you think?
I started off as an actress, mime artist, ended up working in radio. There was, and I always found, even as a mime, even as a radio person, that costume was an important tool for communication, and I think that ultimately is what it's about for me. It's communication. It's being able to resonate. It's being able to relate to people and be relatable. It's just making that connection. And this is, it's almost like the no-brainer route to get into something like fashion, because yes, indeed, on some levels, it is so superficial. But is it really? I mean, it's indicative of choices that we make, and it's indicative of the way we see ourselves and the way we see others. And, it does run deeper than that sometimes, too.
And it's not superficial.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Well, it got me the Order of Canada, so for some reason, I guess maybe finally, but for a long time.
It's about making people feel good about themselves.
Exactly. It has incredible transformational powers, and but what gave me that drive to do that? For me, I mean, really essentially, and going back to like when I was a kid, I felt this kind of responsibility that because my parents' youth was kind of nipped in the bud. The war broke out when they were, teenagers, and what they had to go through and losing their entire families. And I thought, they could never follow their dreams. They could never pursue those passions. But here I am, growing up in this incredible country. I can do it. So it wasn't just about having a good life or a great life. I mean, I knew I wanted to have a fantastic life, as glamorous and as wonderful and as thrilling as it could be.
Let me turn the question around maybe, and maybe this will make it an easier way to answer it. I mean, you've all had experience being around people who are successful. What is it that and just following on this theme of inspiration, and then we'll get to education, but in terms of those who you've been inspired by or you've noticed the success in, what are common traits, or what is a common trait that you've noticed amongst people who have inspired you, who are successful people? Margaret?
Me first?
Yeah.
Quickly come to mind two people, my mother and my husband. I learned so much from both of them. Passion is the first thing. Passion for your community, passion for whatever you're about to, certainly for my husband, devoting his passion to building a huge business. And my mother, very much community engagement, public service. But I think passion is what drives leadership. It drives all successful achievement. And you didn't mention passion, but I know you had to have passion for rowing. And you have passion for making people feel good through fashion. So passion is the underlying driver. in any form of leadership, any form of achievement, whether it's business, politics, social service, public service. So my mother and my husband.
Now, because I know you're intimately involved in and interested in early childhood education, something like passion, how do you inspire someone to have passion? How do you teach passion?
I think it's a pretty hard thing to teach. I think you have to experience it, probably. And how did I experience it? I'm in early child development because I got involved as a social worker in family violence. And I saw the devastation to families, to children. Now we know that it actually gets under their skin and affects the architecture of their brain. So that led me into, from downstream to upstream in this field. And so I'm devoting my life to try and educate Canadians about the importance of putting science into action. But how do you, I don't know how you teach passion. You have to dig deep and find your own.
Jeannie, what about you in terms of that common trait that you've noticed in successful people or people you inspire, you find inspirational?
Okay, because that's a big difference. And successful people, and what do you mean by successful people? And what
right,
is,
Good
a
question.
successful person to me is not necessarily someone who's, got a lot of recognition or
All right,
a ton of
then
money.
in people who you're inspired by.
An open heart, and a sense of compassion.
Marnie?
I think the first person I sort of thought about was a friend of mine. He's Stephen Redgrave. He's a British rower. And he won 5 consecutive gold medals, like 84, 88, 92, 96, 2000. If you could imagine in rowing, winning and leading, being world leading for that period of time. And one of the favorite, I love just the way Steve is always, I love watching him behind the scenes, like how he carries himself behind the scenes. But one of the things that he said that always resonates with me is that you don't train for the good days, you train for the bad days. So he'd won a race that was just terrible, and someone asked him if he felt lucky to win on that day. And I think if I were to use his quote, is that I don't train so that I can win only on the good days, I train so that I can win on the bad days too. And now, like I would say that that's what I watch from everybody in every industry, like to watch someone be successful when there's low-hanging fruit, that's not inspiring, and I don't find that as anything that I can learn from. But when you watch someone who really perseveres and pushes through and finds what they measure as success in difficult times, I think that's where I get inspiration.
In terms of wanting to achieve something, how important is it to visualize your goals? To really have a clear stated goal, either in life or in a career? Or
I think you've got to have a direction. You're a bit rudderless if you don't. You have to have a direction, have a plan, but then I think you have to let go of it. Like have a plan, but don't expect anything to go according to plan. And one of the things that when I'm working with the athletes, like we believe in perfection. We believe every day we're going out and we're trying to be perfect with our technique, with everything from the way we look, the way a baby finger is held on the end of an oar, whatever it's going to be. But the truth of it is perfection's a myth. And so in having this plan and working towards perfection, you have to let go of being perfect, because that's where you lose that open heart. You get too neurotic if you really are thinking that it can only be this one way.
Yeah, you can't get married to any outcome, as much as, I think it's important to visualize even sometimes, to really visualize, to see yourself, put yourself in that situation, really dream it and really believe it. But yeah, you can't ever really get married to the outcome, because chances of it winding up exactly like that are pretty slim to none.
Margaret, what do you think?
I think everybody who has any kind of passion or a vision, you have to have some ultimate goal to focus on. I think that's very, very important. However, getting married to it too tightly, not being able to let go at times when things don't happen exactly the way you expected them to or wanted them to, and being defeated by those disappointments. I think that the disappointments are things you have to see as opportunities for learnings.
It's hard to do.
You know what? It is hard to do. And it's hard not to feel defeated when you don't meet that goal or people let you down. But that's okay. You just keep on going and see, okay, what could I have done better? My husband taught me that setbacks are opportunities. He taught me that big time.
You all seem like overachievers. You seem like people who have worked really hard. And I know that to be true. I know a couple of you, and I know how hard you work. What have you learned about balance, about life-work balance? Arianna Huffington's put out a new book called Thrive, and I had the chance to talk to her about it a couple weeks ago. And so I don't know if you guys are familiar with this book, but she's saying that we need a third metric now. We live in this society obsessed with Western society, obsessed with money and status, and that there's a bunch of people who are workaholics trying to achieve that, and that when you combine that with this connected society where we all have these gadgets, and we take work home with us, and we wake up and we look at our emails, and that there's no balance at all unless we create that space. And she says it's only in creating that space that we'll actually be even more effective in terms of what we want to do. It's an interesting argument coming from someone who works as hard as Arianna Huffington does, but contradictions aside, what have you thought in terms of, I know you've subjugated your life to your career in a lot of ways, Jeannie.
I've just come back from the longest vacation of my life, and I'm 62 years old, and I went on a 10-day vacation. It's like the longest time I ever took off, and it was fabulous. And the book that I was reading all along the way was Thrive by Arianna Huffington. So I'm a work in progress, and I am really transforming myself and my life, as I sit here and as I listen to all this, wonderful inspiration. But I do say this, people, and my mother always said to me, bless her, she's so great, she's 93, she's always very, Jim, why do you have to work so hard? I went, don't worry about me working so hard. When I stop working, that's when you have to worry about me. When you love your work, when you relish it, when it's as multifaceted as I've made it, because I really have concocted my own kind of job, whatever my job is, I'm not even sure, but when you really, really love what you do, it never feels like work. It really never feels like work. So, I don't know. Yes, are there times that we have to really step back from it because we're almost addicted to it because we love it so much and we become gluttons for it and we want more and more and more. So yeah, there are times when I have to force myself to, turn to something, maybe a little more soothing that doesn't get me as riled up. But
has there been a time in your life when you've regretted where something was sacrificed because of how heavy your career has been?
Well, I thought, stupidly, at the time, and for quite a long time, that my passion and my overzealousness for my work and cost me perhaps my marriage, because my husband one day told me after 18 years together that he just didn't want to be married to me anymore, and I thought I really didn't see it coming, hit by a Mack truck, whatever, but I really felt that it was, it's because I cared too much about fashion, because I loved my work too much, because I poured myself in it too much, and I blamed that, and I thought if I looked at another fashion magazine again, I'd throw up. Like I started to kind of hate it. But as the months and years went by, I realized, no, it wasn't that. It's who I am. It's who you are. I don't think there's anything, no need to feel, oh yeah, I work too hard. Oh yeah, I'm too, into my job. Like, I don't know, workaholic, that's a funny kind of word. They used to use it a lot in the old days. I don't hear people use it that much anymore, and I would hope that they never use it. I mean, if you're a workaholic and you love what you do, and it's not bad for you and it's not killing you, I mean, I don't think I've suffered for it in any way. I think it's built me up. It's made me thrive, truly.
Marnie, balance?
I'm loving that answer. Well, I think, as athletes, our metrics, our work is measured, right? So I know if I'm not resting enough, my work output, it's obvious. I'm going slower. I can't lift as much. So I was taught sort of in my sporting career, the value of resting, the value of eating properly, and all these things that does contribute to balance. And then, as I move into all the other things, and I'm a bit like Jeannie, I go out and I find something that I think somebody should be paying me for. Like I should be a mentor of the Olympic team, or I should be, writing a book. And I sort of create these elements that, we become the CEO of stuff, in a sense. And so then you're juggling all these different things. But I am very aware of making sure that, and reading my own body for that concept of balance, and knowing that rest. And even at the table with Oksana, we're saying how, I did when I finished from rowing, I got into this crazy sport of eco challenge. It's this crazy, you go for 500 kilometers, you go by foot, mountain bike, canoe, kayak, and in 5 days, 500 kilometers, you might sleep for a total of 6 to 8 hours. I'm sure you do this stuff all the time, right? In the woods, I can't imagine it. But one of the things you realize is, let's say you walk at 6 kilometers an hour, and you start getting exhausted. You know that suddenly you're down to 2 kilometers an hour. So in 4 hours, you will walk only 4 kilometers. I know if I sleep for an hour, in those 2 hours, I will then walk 6 kilometers. Right? So I've been taught the metrics of balance. And so in being ambitious and in being driven and having passion, I know how to make sure I'm putting nutrition in and putting sleep in for that side of balance. But the other thing for drive, I find it crazy because I get parents come up to me all the time going, my 7-year-old who used to love gymnastics, or my 9-year-old won't go to sport anymore, but they're really talented. They're a really great soccer player, and I know they should be playing in this soccer league, but they won't go. I'm like, you can't stop them in the same way. Like Jeannie's like, don't stop me from working. It's the same with our kids. When there's that passion and that drive, there's nothing that'll stop you doing it. And so it doesn't become, you don't sacrifice anything. You just realize you're choosing things. I chose, until I was 32, I had so little social life that I didn't even figure out I was gay until I was 37. There was like a whole element to that. I was just so happily, passionately involved in what I was doing, and I had perfect balance for what I needed at that point in time. Random announcement, but
It's amazing that is a benefit of being an athlete, though, that it's built in, that you learn that balance. I mean, to your point, Jeannie, it's great that you've been able to do it, but, in terms of Ariana's book and a lot of other studies that have come, we suffer from more mental health, we suffer from more stress-related diseases, there is a cost to people working their asses off, 24/7, and it can be scary, and I'm trying to figure that out myself. But Margaret, what's your thought on this?
Well, work-life balance is something I talk a lot about, not because I have to worry about it today. I don't. I'm a widow with grandchildren. I have total control over for the most part, over my life. And what I devote to work is really not work, it's a passion. And I raised my children in the 50s, 60s, and 70s before BlackBerries and iPhones and computers, and roles were delineated. My husband had his role and I had mine, and everything was, we didn't struggle with that work-life balance. But I am very aware of the struggles facing young people today, and I look around at all these young faces, because that's what I do. I'm trying to build an early child development system to support young families today. 70% of children have 2 working parents. Another 10% a single working parent. And with the knowledge about, every single one of these high achievers wants to be a good parent, wants to be the best at parenting, and at the same time, with the demands in the workplace, they need to be the best at work. And work is no longer 9 to 5. It comes home with your BlackBerry and stays with you till midnight. Young parents are sleep deprived, and then they have to worry about giving their kids the best, getting them to a good school, a good preschool, a good childcare situation, picking them up, trying to get them home, and all the demands of being a good parent on top of being a good worker in the workplace. I'm totally with you on that. I understand it. I was a stay-at-home mom, but I fully appreciate the demands that are placed on families today, and that's a lot of what I devote my time to.
I want to get to two very quick questions. I know we're tight for time, so let me, I'll ask you to try and address these. One from the cards that's quite good. And first of all, another thing, this was important for me to get to on the education side. Something that you all have in common is giving back to the community. Tell me why that's been important to you, and whether you believe that it's a responsibility once you have the success that you've had to actually do that. Jeannie?
Oh, yeah. That's a no-brainer. People ask me to do stuff, and it's like, what an honor to be able to serve your community that way. I mean, to me, it's an absolute honor. I just can't, I can't imagine a life of not giving back. I mean, I'm a firm believer in the fact that you get what you give. So, it's just a symbiotic kind of relationship that I'm just thrilled that I'm able to do, whatever I can do or what I'm asked to do or what I can think up doing. But yeah, it's an absolute responsibility for everyone.
In the giving, you receive far more than you give. I think it sounds like a cliche. It's an absolute fact. And anybody who is in that position and has the privilege of being able to give. Philanthropy is not just about giving money and writing checks. It's also about engagement and giving of yourself. And anytime you give of yourself, people give back far, far more than you ever gave. And so the rewards, it doesn't matter what you do, whether you're coaching a minor hockey team or leading a Boy Scout troop, or working as a volunteer in a mental health agency or anywhere, believe me, the rewards are huge, and they're it's very esteeming.
Arnie?
Yeah, it's always more fun. I always feel guilty when I'm giving back, because I always tend to feel like I'm getting more from it than anything else. And I've always targeted youth, kids and youth being healthy and active, not necessarily high-performance sport, but I think I know how much I got out of sport. And out of sport, even before I found rowing, like just whether I was going to be running around. Like I was a terrible basketball player. I was terrible at, soccer and things like that. I just don't have any agility or hand-eye coordination. I'm really suited for sitting on my ass and going backwards a lot. But I should get into politics, maybe. But I think it is absolutely a responsibility, and it's an easy responsibility to try and grow and pass on the passion and the information and show people how simple it is, and the return on whether it's a time investment or a financial investment. That a return on that investment for healthy and active kids comes through so many different areas of our life. Whether that is domestic or international, like it's always been a no-brainer for me to have kids play.
Well done. You got a final question. And by the way, before the final question, a question that I won't ask you seriously, but I will contribute from our friends at Jarvis Collegiate. Where's Jarvis? Anybody from Jarvis? How do you all look so young? You guys are so cute. More sophisticated question. And perhaps a slightly more challenging question. This is going to be a difficult one to do in 30 seconds, but do your best with it. Each of you has been honored for your influence in a sector that arguably has been neglected by the government institution that honored you. What do you feel is the role of government in arts, culture, sport, or child welfare? And are we in Canada equipped to make positive changes?
I can be quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's super sad that municipal and provincial governments no longer have the resources. It's the federal programs, and even then, there's no federal programs to keep kids active. I think we've got to get daily physical education back into school. And that's a responsibility of the provincial government. I think it's the responsibility of municipalities to build infrastructure and resources because they are really community centers now. And in the way that, 50 years ago, a community would be built in a church or a mosque or a temple. Now everyone can come together. Those institutions still exist, but we can bring everyone together in one building, whether it's going to be a swimming pool or a soccer field or whatever it's going to be, and that's the role of municipalities. So I do think that governments need to get involved. I think after post-Vancouver, we have done better than many countries post-Olympics, but I think governments and politicians are short-sighted. That's now getting long. But governments are short-sighted because they're looking at their election cycle for the benefits that come through sport and physical activity, and we've got to be looking 10 years down the road for these to come around.
Margaret McKay?
Government absolutely has a role in early learning and care, early child development. It is a critical and important initiative for government, provincial and federal. It's not only a story about human development, it's a story about human capital. It's a strong economic story as well. That's it.
And speaking of fashion, I think it's part of our national identity. I think it's just as valid a form of popular culture as music and film and you name it, really. And I'm dismayed that the federal government doesn't do more to support our Canadian talent. I think you have to scream twice as hard when you're Canadian. And even then, it's pretty hard to get noticed. So I think it's time to step in and help some of our young talent, for sure.
It's been such a pleasure. Thank you, you three. Marnie McBean, Margaret McCain, Jeannie Becker. Thank you.
Thank you, Gian. Jeannie, Marnie, and Margaret, thank you so much for sharing your stories. I said earlier that this was a special event because we had so many young people in the audience. There's one 10-year-old in the audience that's near and dear to my heart. I know he's been inspired by listening to these stories because when you hear about people that follow their dreams and passions, you realize what an impact you can have on the people around you and on the communities in which we live. So for that, thank you for not only inspiring my 10-year-old, but all of us here in the room. And Gian, you're a masterful interviewer and storyteller, so thank you so much for weaving these stories into such a special event. Thank you. That concludes our television programming, which will be broadcast on Rogers TV in the days to come. We're grateful to Rogers TV for their continued promotion of Canadian Club events. Thank you once again for being here. This meeting is now adjourned.